Are you thinking about opening up your own restaurant? I'm Mark Handian with Handian Construction. We design, engineer, and build restaurants in Southern California region. Since we specialize in restaurants, it becomes our responsibility to give out all the specific information that has to do with restaurants. And especially if you're in the restaurant picture, we're extreme foodies, especially every single staff we have. So we follow restaurants in a different fashion. First, you begin with finding a location that you're interested in. While going to the sites with your realtor, that's when we come in. We actually do free consultations in the field, on site, and we actually help most of the realtors to answer all the questions that you would need. For instance, if you're at a job site, you want to know if this is going to work within your budget. It's really hard to get an architect there. Usually they need a lease signed or something, or at least their contract. And contractors usually, they need some kind of permit set up. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're just offering free consultation to answer all the questions here, since we're a design build company. We do all the architectural, building, engineering, everything in-house. So what to expect from us at a site visit? So here are some things we look at. First, we check if you have at least 200 amp panel. Now, this is something that a lot of people think you're going to need 400 amps or maybe less than 200. But 200 is average for a restaurant. So we got to at least see, if it's less, you got to get your landlord somehow to upgrade it for you. We check things like the HVAC system. You got to make sure that's kind of set up by the landlord as well. Then also there's usually restrooms, but most people think they're ADA, but they're not. ADA meaning handicap accessible. So you might have to redo the restroom, especially with the cove base and everything, with the health department restrictions. And then we get into more detail about how the parking is, if that's even going to be a takeout or a sit-down restaurant. Some retails you can't switch it to a restaurant picture. So if it's retail, it's easy to turn it into a takeout, because takeout's considered somewhat like a retail. And then while we're on site, we're also looking into the water, sewer, all the miscellaneous, like if there's gas accessibility. Sometimes the gas stub out is inside the building. Sometimes, we let you know that we have to go with the gas company and try to set it up, which is not a big deal. It's just little things start adding up. Now, once on site, I start talking to my customers about what the eatery is about. So what's the concept? How many equipments you would need? We kind of size the hood on site. Try to see if there's accessibility. If you have a roof on top of your unit, it's easy and affordable to put a hood system. But now if there's apartments and everything above it, now we got to look for a shaft. Now if there's a shaft accessible, we look to see if it's fire rated, and then we can use it. But now all these things start adding up to your prices. The lower the square footage, or the lower the levels are of the building, the less the hood becomes, because everything is custom built. And then at the same time, if you're not going through a shaft or anything, everything becomes very simple. So if you're on a tight budget, you have to look for a space that has nothing above you, so the roof is fully accessible for you. Because certain equipments, you have to be certain feet apart from each other, from intake to exhaust, and those details, I don't want to bother you with it. Now, once we start talking about your concept, we start visualizing how your setup would be on site. And this is just the first time I've met you. This is how it should work for you, so you can get an idea if you should lease the place. But meanwhile, I'm trying to get some ideas from you to see how we can put numbers to the game. So once setting up, we would have to see if most times you would need a hood, like if you have a juice place or anything like that. Every city works different ways. Every county works different ways. Usually your health department and fire department is run by county, and then every city has their own jurisdictions. Now, a lot of people are scared of putting grease interceptors or grease traps into the unit. And a lot of people are scared with remodeling the restroom. Now the restroom costs a lot if you're just remodeling the restroom while you're open. So there shouldn't be any fear to relocate your restroom. You're already trenching the whole space. So there's plenty of plumbing that's going to happen regardless. So don't get caught off guard in relocating your restroom. It's going to save you a lot of square footage, or else you're going to have a long hallway all the way to your restroom just for handicap accessibility, which you're paying for that square footage that you're not using. Now, grease-wise, there's many little notes in the code that you can look at, and you can calculate grease in a certain way. So you don't have to put a full grease interceptor system outside of your building. That's going to cost you about $50,000. And that's mainly construction is about $30,000, and then city has a lot of fees. Some cities you're paying $18,000 just permit fees. So it's easy to try to get approved a grease trap inside the building, which costs you, I mean, it's night and day. It's not going to cost you that much, tops $6,000-$7,000. It's not a big deal. So, but there's a lot of cities that require that you have to have a grease interceptor system outside. So look for a place that the landlord already has one that you can tap into. Now, a lot of times there's little restaurants that are tapping into this system. So if they're connected into the system, when you're talking to the environmental department, all you have to do is get a letter from the landlord that says that the landlord will be monitoring or servicing the grease interceptor, and then that's the only way that you would be able to connect to it as well. Otherwise, the environmental department would want everyone to be responsible for their own grease interceptor system. So, putting that aside, now there's a lot of restaurants. If you're on a very tight budget, people go and try to look for restaurants they can buy into. Now be careful on this. If you're putting in $50,000, $70,000 to take on someone else's restaurant, it's very hard to kind of manipulate it into your own system. So that's what that's saying is you're taking on their concept and then you're trying to make it work for yours. But in the end, once you're setting up your part, you would have just got a brand new system for yourself the way you wanted it. So you're not gaining any funds on this, but you're losing your warranty. No general will be responsible for that stuff. So, and you can't ask them to. So anything underground or anything set up, or even equipments that are used, it's a little bit tougher for an architect or anyone to get that approved, especially if it's a used custom hood. And nowadays, health department wants everything to have the captive air or a different system, but as long as the tag is on the hood, or else you might have to do an air balance report before you even get it approved. So there's a lot of tricks to the game, because if it's used to hood, sometimes you can't even put a radiant charbroiler underneath. But if it's not, you can easily do it, because the captive air will come in and taking that into consideration. So, but with that being said, there's a lot of Subways, Quiznos, I've done Hungry Howie's. These always have very good and approvable kitchens, and they're very spacious. So if you're gonna take one of those on, which you're not paying for usually, you just take on the lease. Now that is gonna make you save maybe at least $100,000 if, you know, I mean, I don't wanna save more, but that's about it. Because all the kitchen, as long as you set it up the same way, you should be fine. Most Subways have a Type 2 hood. Now all you do is keep the same location and then change it to a Type 1 hood. You will be bringing new gas to the building, but imagine if you kept all the kitchen and the restrooms all the same in the back. No one sees that. But remodel just the front, add a hood, set up the gas suppression system and the whole 9 yards, you should be fine. It's very fast and easy. The provable is, it will get approved 100%. Now we have the location. Let's say that location is good to go. Now we got to talk about some pricing. So the hardest part on our job is, I mean, architecturally, we can easily come up with a solid price, but construction has to be estimated. Sometimes it's $40,000 give and take. So it's really hard to kind of give a price in that sense. But a lot of times, if it's too similar to something we've done, it's not a big deal. Now, I want to talk about what a design build company is, as in what we do as a design build company. First, let's say we take on a project. Now, we have one of our guys from the office. We would send them to the job site. He would measure the whole site, every single corner, every plumbing line, every gas line, anything that's on site with a tape measure. We don't believe in the laser or the wheel or anything like that. Every site, as big as it is, as small as it is very tight when we're designing. At the same time, we'll get the equipment list from our customers. We need the spec sheets. Sometimes just the models will do. We work with some of the equipment companies, so we should be okay. But we have another person in the office who would actually draw each equipment to the specs. Some of them we already have, but has to be very detailed measurements. Now, a lot of times, and actually all the time, I'm the one running the floor plan. Now, when I'm running the floor plan, I've already talked to the customer. I kind of have an idea of how to do the setup. I mean, in the end, this has to work for you. So when I'm doing the setup, I actually have everyone in mind. The health department, the building department, fire department. I mean, we draw it per code, but at the same time, we talk to our subcontractors and we make sure that the way we set up, it's gonna work. A lot of times, we kind of bypass putting toilets in front of foundation areas. It's really hard to jackhammer a foundation. At the same time, it's hard to pass it through the building inspector while you're in the field. So we try to avoid every surprise there is in the field, which pretty much takes away a majority of your change orders. So the flow of this floor plan has to really match your concept. So we avoid things where having 3 compartments things at a walking distance or the walkway of your servers. So there's a lot of little details to it. Now, the good thing about having it set up to where you have all your subcontractors, everyone in mind, is you submit plans to the city to get permits. We don't submit to get corrections. We already know the code. There might be some little justifications when we're setting something up. Unless it's a new type of concept, like a distillery or something we're doing that the city's a little bit concerned about. But other than that, we have a lot of good communication with everyone. Especially the first time we submitted to health department, they just have a list. If you go down the list, it's easy to get approvals. So there is not much to it. Now, when we're doing our drawings, we don't do any renderings or we don't do anything that's aesthetically pleasing. It's just the city doesn't care about it. And there's no need to waste time. We want to be in construction as much as you want to be in construction. So once the floor plan for us is set up, it's basically me and my customer, we go back and forth. And once the flow is all set, we would do another site visit. We would take the engineers, the mechanical and plumbing engineer and the electrical engineer, and sometimes if it needed, structural engineer, and we would take them back to the job site. And now, at this time, we give them a floor plan. At the same time, we would go over the floor plan with you, and we would have them inspect the whole site. The last thing we need is any surprises in the field. I want to be able to be building this with my eyes closed, which means my subcontractors should be able to run anything with the way the drawings are set. It should be very accurate to the field. So once that's set up, it would take us about 1.5 or 2 weeks. We would work on all the handicap accessibility, construction details, and all the miscellaneous details. Every drawing, every sheet for us is pretty much set up for a different subcontractor. And we add things throughout experience in the field. So anytime they would need more information, the following projects will have that information. And then engineers will have everything generated. And then once everything comes in within that 2-week mark, we submit to every single department on the same day, whether it's health, fire, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, building. We would go get the water certification or the water clearance for the grease trap. So every city, of course, is different. So everything will be submitted in the same day. The same thing, the same drawings will be submitted to the subcontractors, our subcontractors, the same day. So we have a month to waste here by the time we hear back from the city. That's when I meet with my customer and we talk about aesthetics. That way we're not losing any time. So once my subcontractors are generating their bid, we would go over the aesthetics part of it, which is controlled by you. And then we want to be setting up the bid or the contract before we get permits. So once we're comfortable with the contract, which you already had an idea of how much it would be from us, and every detail will be written down. Once you're comfortable with it, we would like that signed. The reason being, as soon as we get permits, we pull them the same day and we start construction the next day. That way we're not wasting time talking about bidding or anything. Once we have permits, we'll start. There's no waiting game. The reason getting to know ahead of time the contract is comfortable is I've already pretty much know which subs to use on that project. So I would give them heads up, get them ready, and I know which ones that have to be on the site right away. And then that's how we set it up. That's how our process, our typical process has been 6 months, which means 3 months in design and getting permits, 3 months in construction. Now I know most people call that 3 months is 60 days, but it's pretty much the same thing. But you should always keep another month in your head, just in case, for the last minute kind of inspections, or sometimes just job site, there's some things that the landlord didn't provide, or you never know. This is construction. Things happen all the time. But to minimize it is what we're here for. So I'm going to talk to you about some concerns that everyone calls us on. So, or we kind of hear it through the grapevine. Now, a lot of people will look at hoods. They'll go online and they'll see, you know, they'll see a hood. They say, oh, it's about $2,000, whatever, and I can get one. You don't have to worry about it. Now, when you're looking into a hood, there's a lot of things you're missing. I've done that mistake the first time I did my first restaurant. So it's good to let the general, first of all, handle the hood. You want them to warranty the hood. That's your biggest money maker. So the hood is that part that you're looking at. That's just the can. So it's just a stainless steel square box. Everything else, the ducting that goes all the way up to the roof, it's all fire wrapped. That's custom work. That gets 3 inspections, sometimes 4. They can't have any single hole in that system. The exhaust system, the makeup air, your fire suppression. There's a plumber involved in this. There's an electrician involved in this. So there's a lot that goes in it. But you want the hood to be very efficient. Now, you know, usually your HVAC system is given to you by the landlord. But a lot of times the inspector is going to ask the general contractor to make sure that they put in the economizer. You know, sometimes there's an alarm, you have to put in the smoke detectors. So you got to keep that in mind. A lot of times we wouldn't know this once we're in the field, but a lot of generals wouldn't know. Also, now we are a design build company, but it's okay to hire an architect to do your projects, but you got to make sure you talk to them in the right fashion. You got to see if they have any construction experience, as in maybe they have a friend or they works with someone in construction. That's always good to know. You don't want to just get a permitted drawings just because you got a fast permit. That's when you're going to run into a lot of problems. There's a lot of drawings that came to us and we walked away because we know we're going to do double the change orders or triple sometimes. So there's a lot of things to pick up on. So it's very, very important to have detailed drawings. You're going to spend maybe an extra $1,000 or $2,000 in doing drawings, but in the end, in construction, you're saving $50,000 sometimes. So you do not want to be in the field and then expect a lot of change orders. That's going to hurt your budget. Now, there's been a lot of times that I go to the field and I have these conversations with realtors or my customers, and I talk them out of going into the restaurant business. The reason being, if let's say you have $100,000, you want to open a restaurant, and we take on this job, and then it's going to cost $150,000. Now, it's better you have the funding, because in the end, let's say I'm building it halfway, and then we walk away because you stop paying us. Then it's pretty much, it's a losing battle for us. But guess what? You lost as well. So $100,000 of your savings just going away. You need to be prepared. The reason we give out these free informations is to just educate you, to prepare you to what to expect when you're getting into restaurants. There's a lot of departments involved. There's a lot of people involved. I have at least 20 subs per each project. Every single person that's on my projects have a license. So that's why we take on 14 to 20 restaurants in one shot. And we can take on about 50, but the biggest deal on my projects is I'm always involved. I always want to make sure everything is being done per plan. So that's good to know. And that's what you're supposed to do with your architect or even the contractor. Now you gotta make sure they're compatible. Now the easy part on us to make sure that we make our deadlines is, let's say I have a certain sink that's in the way of something. We dug up the floor and there's some kind of a sewage line that's running that we can't touch, or some kind of utility line. All I have to do, since we're a design build, is talk to the inspector and say we're gonna move it to the left or to the right, and we basically handled in 5 minutes. Now, if there's another architect involved, sometimes we have to call the customer. Customer have to talk to the architect. And we have to do a waiting game. Now, that's a simple example I gave you, but sometimes the examples are not very simple. Now, when you're doing a waiting game, when you have subcontractors on site having a nice routine operation and everything's going smoothly, and you get them to stop for 2-3 weeks, that kills momentum. And by the time you bring them back, it just, the timing and the schedule gets very sloppy. That's why you got to make sure once you start something, you have to let it run very smoothly. You don't want any gaps. It's the same way as you guys are in the food business. It's the same thing, it's the same way everything operates. You just don't want it to stop midway. That's when you're going to get an efficient system. And then you're going to come up to the ending, and then you're going to open. So when you're in the restaurant business, now you guys have a lot of stuff on your plate. You have menus to decide on, you have chefs to hire, you have equipments you have to follow through. There's a lot of things you guys have going on. So we handle all the rest of it for you. So basically, if you're gonna hear from me as a contractor, it's gonna be baby steps. I would text you or call you and say, I need to know the color of this wall. And then it will stop for a week, and then I would say something really simple, like, is this tile okay? We're gonna keep going and going and going. So that simplifies your process. And basically, we're already hired to do the job, and we just do it. And that's how we run it. Now, a lot of times people come to me, and you guys are very sneaky sometimes. The first thing we're approached by saying is, this is not our first one, we're gonna open 10 restaurants. Make sure you don't make too much money on this one. And I always say the same thing. The first one's always the expensive one. That's when we're gonna get to know each other. And that's how you're gonna get to know your contract, your basically build out, to see what materials you chose. It's gonna get very tricky, but there's ways we help you. No one spends too much money on restaurants nowadays. The food concept is very detailed and good, that you don't have to go spending millions of dollars on the restaurant nowadays. So there's a lot of good items that we choose, and they're very affordable. And then we just knock it out. We give you examples of what we've done. We basically have every single job we've done on Instagram, and we also have it on our website. Every time we open a project, we put in all the pictures, just to give you guys ideas. Now, sometimes it's good to have interior designers involved. Depends on the location, but most times we get it out of you. We show you different things. You show us some Pinterest items, and there's a lot of ways you can save money, but in the end, when you open, you feel like you pretty much designed the whole thing, which you did. And it just becomes more a closeness with you and your restaurant. Now, there's a lot of times that we have a certain cushion we had left behind, and then you're stressed about getting a certain stone or some kind of upgrade you want to do. When I feel like there's access funding in our contract, I just take it on, because in the end we want this to look nice as well. Like I said, we're one of the contractors that push Instagram very well. Now, we are a design build company. We have 2 businesses under our corporation. We have Handmark Services. You can hashtag Handmark Services and you'll see, but that's where we do drawings and permits. So you would be getting one solid contract from us in the beginning when you're leasing. And then Handian Construction, of course, we do the construction part, which we will give you like a ballpark figure of where you're gonna be. And most of the time, judging by that, if that's your budget, we will design to that budget and make it work. Now, you always have to keep in mind with inflation nowadays, by the time you get permits, sometimes materials and everything keeps going up and up. There are certain changes, but it shouldn't exceed it too much. I have customers where we started with a 10-foot hood on the site, and then in the end, when we designed it, it was a 30-foot hood. That's a big difference on pricing. So there's a lot of things you have to take into account. But with us, once we have a contract already set, we don't want to talk about money. We want to just make it a partnership and then just run a smooth operation. And if you did follow us on Instagram or online anywhere in social media, you'll see how close our customers are with us. We just become friends in the end. And I think it all comes through because we're foodies. We love what we do. We love opening restaurants, and we love all the concepts that come our way. We enjoy what we do. Earlier we were talking about how you were thinking about, let's say, many different locations that you want to do it in. The reason mentioned that, first one's expensive, first one's learning curve, but you have to perfect it. So if you are opening 10 locations, you have to do it in ways that it's going to go smoothly for all of them. But sometimes you might put them in different type of situations, like a food hall system or a brick and mortar. So you have to put a concept that it will work for all of them. So many of these ideas, you can get them through our website, and you can go www.handiancorp.com, and you'll see all the different areas that we've built throughout the years we've been in business. There's a lot of stuff that comes up in construction, of course, but we handle it with the inspectors. We know all the codes. Sometimes it's very challenging, especially in downtown LA area, but once you're following the code, it's fine. Now, with that being said, the one trick to this is it's going to be the same price of if you build something to code or you try to Mickey Mouse something in. So make sure everyone's building it to code. That's just a word of advice. Now, with that being said, I think you guys have the whole picture of what we've been talking about today, from design to build, how the whole process works. In the future, we're going to start doing more of these videos. They'll probably be very specific to details, like let's say, hood specifically, grease specifically. We want to educate the public as much as we can. So feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube. And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, but feel free to contact us through our website in any method that we've chosen there. It's fine by us. A little bit about our company, or a little bit about me. I'm a civil engineer from Cal Poly Pomona. I've been an honor student. I've done structural engineering for 12 years before I started my business. 6 years at Fleetwood Homes. We've done mobile homes. I worked 6 years in high-rise industry at Clark Pacific doing precast concrete. So running a restaurant is very simple, and scheduling it is not a big deal to us. And all those experiences, and I've also, while going to college, I've worked as a welder and I've worked as an electrician. I've been in the trades throughout my life. So basically my subcontractors can't even give me any kind of trouble. Basically, I've been in the business too deep. So that helps me to answer any questions my customers will have. But at the same time, it helps a lot to keep you within budget. So, and that's the biggest goal, I think. So the past 5 years, Yeah, we've been in business. I think we've opened at least 60 restaurants, and we love all the different concepts we were part of, and we're flattered in some of them that we were hired to do. So hopefully the next one that we're gonna do detailed videos will be at your restaurant. So we look forward to hearing from you guys. Again, I'm Mark Handian with Handian Construction. We design, engineer, and build restaurants, and we love to eat. Thank you.